Welcome to the Friday edition of Juan's World, and I'm at a little bit of a pause at the moment with my textbook that I'm writing with my son, because it's in his hands and he's not communicating with me very much. So I'm working on another book on the anthropology of the Bible, and I've got some proposals in the mail, so things can move along. But here's the really great thing. Yesterday I received this. It's my latest book called Moments, and it was published this month, and I'm delighted to have it in my hands, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, but let's roll the credits first. Now, you may recall that not long ago I showed you this one, which came out a couple of months ago, my Anthropology of Genesis. And I'm really delighted to have a physical copy, not just an e-book, but a physical copy that I can hold in my hands. There's something special about it. And now I have a new one. And I'll show you again, just out of vanity. There's a picture on the cover of the Radcliffe Camera, which is one of the libraries that are part of the Bodleian Library complex in Oxford, where I used to go and study. Well, let's put study in quotes when I was an undergraduate. But I did eventually get around to doing some real research there on Morris dancing, and that's documented in this book. So why is it called Moments? All right, well, it's called Moments because moment has a lot of meanings. A moment can be a small portion of time. It can also be a special part of time. You can say we're having a moment, or this was a time of great moment. Moment can mean wait. And in relation to that, you can also talk about moments as turning points. For example, you can say that a lever has moments, which means the physics of movement and so forth. And so the book is about, I guess you would call them points in my life when I had like an epiphany. And suddenly I said, whoa, that's different. I should think about things differently. Well, I don't now see. I think it was. I think I captured 16. Let me just double check. Yes, no, 15 because chapter 1's the introduction. Chapter 2, fascinating first moment that I can remember in my life. When I was working in a factory in Slough, on Slough Trading Estate, which I believe was the location for the UK version of The Office, because now Slough Trading Estate is mostly just office buildings, but back in the 60s when I worked there, it was mostly factories. And I worked at a factory that made governors for large diesel engines. And a governor is a device that controls the rotation of an axle or whatever, so that it doesn't get too fast or too slow. So it keeps its speed constant. And all large diesel engines require governors. And most of them are made in a factory in the United States because they're standard. Like if you've got a diesel car that needs a governor and it's produced by Ford, then they're going to produce thousands or tens of thousands of them, and they need thousands or tens of thousands of governors, and the factory in the United States produces them. But then there are one-off situations, like you've just built an ocean liner and you need a specific governor for that engine and that propeller system. And so they send the specs to a factory in Slough that designs the governor and makes it and then sends it back. So they're all individually tailored governors. And I worked there quite a lot. I started working there just doing general cleaning for a visit from the upper management from the United States back in the Easter break of, 1968. But then they also asked me to work in the parts store in the summer of '68, and again, no, sorry, that would be 69, and then 70. And my job was inventory. Now, inventory, they had a perpetual inventory. That supposedly meant that when people working in the parts store weren't actually picking up parts to make governors, they were just going around checking inventory. And that inventory means they had these gray boxes with numbers on them. There were 5-digit numbers from 00001 up to 99999. And basically the inventory started at number 1 and then number 2 and so on up. And inside each box was a little blue card. And the blue card had on it a sort of tabulation. And it basically said on a line whether the parts were going in or out. So if they were coming in, it would give an invoice number and it'd say, like invoice blah, blah, blah. Or if it was for a part for a new governor, then the governor would have its own inventory number, and if you were picking up a part from that box for that governor, then you would write down the order number for the part. And then next to it was a quantity, and obviously at the top it would have an invoice and it would say, such and so invoice, 100 parts. And so you check out 100 parts and then you put the date. And then when you took out a part or 2 parts or whatever, then you'd also write down what it was for, and you'd subtract 2. And then so you had 100 at the outset, now you've got 98 and so on. And so on it goes down the card. And then at inventory time, you count the number of parts in the box and you check them against the number on the card, and they should match. And usually they didn't for various reasons, either because people took out parts and didn't bother to write on the card, or the other way around, they put them in and didn't write on the card. One way or another, they didn't match. So your job in perpetual inventory is to check the cards. Maybe you do it for an hour or so on a Tuesday afternoon, and then again on a Wednesday morning, and so on. And the idea is that you're supposed to go around from number 1 to 99999 over the course of 6 months, and then you go around again for the next 6 months. So you've done the inventory twice in an annual cycle. Except they didn't, because nobody wanted to do inventory. And so they put it off and put it off and put it off. And I was hired in the first summer just to complete that year's, I think, first cycle or something like that. And then in the second year, they had not done inventory all year. And so we were, I was just, not just me, but a couple of other grammar school boys from Slough Grammar School, did the inventory twice in I think a 6-week period. Now, the thing is that it's really dull work, and it's a long day. You know, you start work at 8 o'clock and you go till 5, and because it's a US company and not a British company, they only give you 30 minutes for lunch. So we had to eat our lunch in 30 minutes. We got overtime at a time and a third for the extra half hour that we worked over the 8 hours a day. But it was still a pretty tedious job. And I used to do like most everybody at the factory. Every so often I'd go off to the bathroom and smoke a cigarette. And when you went in the bathroom, I was just like this clouds of smoke because of all kinds of people smoking in there. And then, you know, go back and do and a lot of the times I didn't even bother counting. I would just look at it and say, yeah, that looks like 56. And I'd write down 56. And the inventory was done in red pen. The regular inventory was done in black pen. So, you know, I'd put invent, you know, certain number, date, move on to the next. And, you know, I just, half the time, didn't bother. And one day, it was about 3 o'clock, maybe something like that in the afternoon, and I was really just bored to tears. You know, because I was a sixth former at that time. I was studying Latin, Greek, and ancient history, and I didn't have a lot of lessons in a day. I think I had, there were 8 lessons per day, or slots for lessons, and I think I had 3 or 4 at most in a day. And so the rest of the time I was just reading or, you know, studying in the library, writing essays, you know, but it was interesting work. And then the inventory was just so dull. And the only reason I did it, and I still don't quite understand why I did it, but I did it because it paid very well. I got paid 7 shillings and sixpence an hour, which worked out to £15 a week, which was a lot of money in 1968. And I also got some chump change for the half hour time and a third at lunchtime, which I used to buy cigarettes and beer. But anyway, you know, I don't remember what day of the week it was, but it was probably midweek sometime, you know, like Wednesday or Thursday. Looking at the clock, and it's 3 o'clock. And I just said out loud, oh gosh, I wish it was 5. And standing right next to me was an old worker from the parts store. I think his name was Alf. And I never spoke to him. Normally, I mean, he kept to himself. He didn't go to the lunchroom for lunches. He used to just keep to himself pretty much. He didn't have any friends at the factory. So he was standing, you know, right beside me when I said that, oh, I wish it was 5 o'clock. And he said out loud to me, why are you wishing your life away? And at the time I thought, oh, old git, what do you know? But that was an important moment, and I've been reflecting on it ever since, because he's quite right. Why did I think that 2 hours of my time was pointless and I should just, you know, give it away? Like, why aren't I doing something interesting? And if this job is not interesting, why aren't I making it interesting? Why aren't I doing something? Why aren't I, for example, playing games with the the counting, or what I mean, why don't I find something to do that makes it interesting? And it also reminded me later of a supermarket that I went to. I didn't normally go to, but I went to this particular supermarket, and there were lines and lines and lines. You know how it is in the United States, where at busy times they sometimes have all the checkouts open. There might be like 8 or 9 of them, and a line of 5 or 6 people with big shopping baskets at every one. And at this particular supermarket, I knew which line I had to go into, because they were all going like, slow, 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 slow. And this one was going very fast, because there were 2 checkout people, women. One was doing the actual register work, and this was in the days before scanning, so she had to actually like look at the object and figure out what it cost, and then punch it in, and then hand it back to a second woman who was doing the bagging. And their goal was to be as fast as they possibly could. They wanted to keep beating records, like I have no idea of the actual numbers, but something like, well, yesterday afternoon we did 156, and today we want to do 157. And they were having a blast. I mean, they were chatting to each other, they were chatting to the customers, but they were motoring along, and it was all great. And the other checkout people were just, going through the motions, and like, £1.5, blah, blah, blah. I mean, just really not taking much interest. And I mean, so their day was, really dull. And, I didn't take that moment when Alf said, "Why are you wishing your life away?" I didn't take it to heart then, but since, it's been my mantra that whenever I have something to do, particularly when it's something really uninteresting to do, as I've been doing for the past week when I've been proofing the citations and the bibliography on my textbook, which is super, super dull work. But I find ways to make it interesting, different ways to make it interesting, and it moves along. And I feel good at the end of the day, even though I've been doing this really tedious work. And that's chapter 2. So that's like a moment. And there are other moments, like the time when I was sitting in the Radcliffe Camera. Remember the Radcliffe Camera? When I was studying for my final exams at Oxford, and mostly just wasting my time because I really hated it. And then I had a moment. I'm in a copyright deposit library. That means that every book that has ever been published in the United Kingdom is in this library. And at the time, I happened to be doing research by myself. My university work was quite different. I was doing my own private research on Morris dancing, which I ended up publishing a book on, but it took me 30 years to get all of the details together. But there I am, really bored out of my mind doing my studying for finals, and realizing every book on Morris dancing ever published in the United Kingdom is in this library. So I rushed to the catalog, and I ordered up all kinds of books, and and whereas I had been just dithering about, now I was just on fire. I got to the library at 9 o'clock when they opened. I think it was 9 o'clock. I was there until 7 when they closed. Every day. Barely had time to go for anything to eat. Never even went out for a cigarette. The only time I went out for a cigarette was when I had to cross over the quadrangle to go to the catalog room and look up a new book, and I'd have a puff on the way there. Otherwise, I was just dedicated, and that's another moment. And there's 15 of those moments in this book, and It's my second autobiography, but the first one that's actually in print. So I've shown you the Genesis book. I've also got two other books that came out this year. 2024 is what they sometimes call my annus mirabilis, my miracle year. 4 books in 1 year. I don't know how that happened, because I went for so long with no books. But the thing is that adage, nothing succeeds like success, is that when I submit a proposal to a publisher now, and they look at my CV, they say, oh, well, look, last 3 years he's published 7 books. He must be good, so we'll publish his book. But before that, they looked at my CV and they said, well, the last 15 years he hasn't published anything, so he must be no good. So we're not going to publish anything. So I had to have a breakthrough year about 2 years ago, and now I'm on a roll. I've got 2 more contracts in the pipeline, and I've got 2 proposals out for consideration by presses. So fingers crossed, and meanwhile, have a great weekend. I'm going to be hitting the books literally, well, not literally, I'm not going to be hitting them, but I'm going to be writing. I'm nearly finished my book on the anthropology of the Bible. I'm going to keep working on that, hoping that my son will come through with chapter 15 of our textbook, which is the last chapter, and then we can send it off to the publisher and be done. So have a great weekend. Please tell your friends about my videos if you like them, and then like and subscribe, and I hope to see you on Tuesday. Have a good weekend.